This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. How are
Good
you?
morning.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good
Good
evening.
morning. Good morning.
I will be right back, guys.
Yeah. Welcome everyone that's joining.
Morning, Bill. Morning, Chava.
Morning,
Chava looks
Bill.
more awake than the rest of us. We're on the first shift of SCO over here, Chava, from our hotel rooms. We're the early shift for session number 1.
I do have a 5-hour advantage for most of you, so
You
yeah.
do. You do. Your
Yes.
5-hour advantage looks good on you.
Yes. Yes. It probably feels good too.
Yeah.
Although I did arrive to Dublin at 1 a.m. today, so I
Okay. All
also had my
right.
pet lack of sleep.
Fair.
So fair. We don't. Thank you for not letting us feel super left out. We appreciate that. I turned cameras
Morning,
on for.
everybody.
Morning, Emily.
Morning.
I turn cameras on after 6 a.m. That's my rule. Bill, how's your audio? You good?
I don't think so. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Yeah,
you.
we
Little
can hear
low.
you.
You sound a
It's
little
a
low,
little
Bill.
low.
I'm trying to turn it up. Is that any better?
It sounds like the
Uh,
microphone's like away from like it sounds like you're almost like away from your microphone, but we can hear you, but it sounds very low, like your
Yeah.
audio, your voice.
Is that any better?
little low still.
Let me try one thing. Give me 1 second.
So, Chris, we have people calling in this morning from where?
We've got a large group probably coming from Dublin,
Ah,
and
my favorite
our
city.
Ireland office. Yeah, exactly. We have people from Germany as well. So we'll have people from and UK. We'll have people from all over. So
Okay. So I can only really practice my German this morning, huh?
let her rip, Keith. Let her rip.
All right.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's that was the language I took in high school. My parents met in Germany, and so they would always speak
Really?
German in front of us when we were kids, so we couldn't understand what they were saying. And I vowed that I would learn German in high school, and I really only learned how to say, "I'm having a party, can you come?" So that's what I learned in German. So
That and where's the bathroom? Probably two of the most
yeah,
important things that, you know.
exactly. I was fluent at that point.
German's a very, yeah, I love language. It's a passion of mine and travel. And German is, my buddy's learning it, and it's such a precise language. You know, it's such a precise language. So
Yeah, very much so.
Right. Is my audio still? Is it working at all?
sounds a little better.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We'll try to
It's a
muddle
little low,
through it.
but we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I sometimes the headset is finicky and it's not syncing on Bluetooth this morning. So awesome. Are we ready to kick it off, Chris
Yep. Let's go ahead and get started.
and Tara? Super. So welcome to SKO 2023. It's a very dark early morning here in Boston at 6:03 as we speak. But hey, super excited. This is the very beginning of SKO 2023. So hopefully everyone pays attention. Keep your cameras on. Be interactive. All that stuff. You're going to hear more of the fun here in a couple of hours. But I am super excited to welcome Kevin Rosen with Profit Builders. Spent a little bit of time with Kevin here a couple of weeks ago, kind of going through his messaging and talk track. And we are Kevin's a best-selling author of Own Your Day and Sales Leadership. So super excited to have him. And with that, not much else to say, but Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. And you can call me Keith. I go by Keith or Kevin. Keith is better off. So
Okay.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me, everyone. Great opportunity. Hopefully we'll spend this hour making an impact in your lives today so we can contribute to your success.
Awesome. Awesome. We're really looking forward to it as well. Thanks, Bill, for the intro. Keith, looking forward to spending some time with you. Just a couple of highlights, as Bill mentioned. And one of the reasons why we're really excited as well for Keith to join is um, when you look at leveling up the organization, as Bill will talk about, and Bill talks a lot about, one of the best investments we can always make is in our people. And as a leadership team across GoTo, we have such an awesome opportunity to help our coworkers, to be mentors, to really drive a lot of the greatness that happens here at GoTo. And that's one of the reasons why we're really excited about having Keith here, is this opportunity of all of the great things Keith does. One of the great things he's really great is coaching salespeople into champions, which is obviously from the third bullet here, one of his best-selling books, and it's been for over almost 15 years now. I hope everyone has had the opportunity, and we're looking really forward to having some good back and forth today, and some good dialogue. And at the end of the day, one of the things we hope everyone gets the opportunity to is take some of the Keith's expertise specifically around coaching and mentoring, and some of the concepts that he's taught in his books and to organizations all across the globe, to really begin the process of helping all of us become better mentor and coaches to our salespeople. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, is help them become better at what it is that they can do to help themselves. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive in.
And not mispronounce names. That's the other thing that we're hoping to get out of this. So I sat here and had Keith written down. So I sincerely apologize, Kevin. I mean, Keith.
At this point, 32 years later, I've known to go by Kevin or Keith.
Yeah, exactly. But I do
It's early.
apologize for that. I had Keith written down, and I even had my old man glasses on, Keith. So still screwed it out.
No worries.
It's all
super.
Yeah, and
welcome.
it's early.
It is early.
It is early. Yeah.
And I just went to bed. I just went to bed a few minutes ago, so we're all good.
Fair enough. Well justified.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, I'm actually going to move away from slide mode, and Keith and I are really excited to just, Keith, if you're okay with it, would love to maybe get some thoughts, some wisdom from you. We have a series of questions. Would love to maybe have some back and forth with you, if that's okay.
That'll be fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Let me exit out of the slide mode here and stop sharing. It's good to finally see everyone. All right. So welcome everyone. As mentioned, for those of you that I think I've met everyone, but Chris Sargent here on our sales enablement team. I work with Tara and team to help support our internal sales enablement and training. But as mentioned, Keith, I think if you're okay with it, let's dive in and get started.
We have lots to cover. I mean, after all, we have an hour to solve world peace and eradicate world hunger, so we might as well get started quickly, right, Chris?
Exactly, and it's down to 53 minutes, so the clock is ticking. So, with that being said, Keith, I think as we get started, a couple things that really resonated with me, reading your books in the past and things like that. I think a couple things that you've been able to support sales transformation, help a lot of organizations do that. And I think, one of your courses, you mentioned this ability to align your new selling approach with your prospects' preferred buying process. One of the things that's near and dear to our heart is we're actually this year getting ready to roll out a new sales process post Sales Kickoff. And as we begin to roll that out, what are some of the things you found specifically sales leaders can do day in and day out to help reps, better align with that concept of how your customers want to buy, and how do you coach those customers?
Awesome. So let's take a step back. First of all, what an amazing opportunity now, Chris, as you mentioned, redesigning your sales process. And I'm actually thrilled to hear that, because you're one of the few organizations that are actually doing that today. Because I've been preaching to the choir over the last 2 years. If managers and salespeople are still selling and managing the way they were 2 years ago, today you're already set up for failure. You're already set up for
Yeah.
failure, because it's not just that our business landscape has changed. It's not that we are now living in a hybrid world, but the conversations that salespeople and leaders are having with their people have evolved. And if I was to put an umbrella over the predominant sales and leadership strategy today, is one word: care. There's an 84% level of disengagement in the workforce today. And I think we can all see that looking at the numbers. Think about that. 84%? Why?
Wow.
Because most people were never, 40% of all organizations never even allowed remote work until during the pandemic. So now you have people that are not used to it. I mean, many companies, especially in IT, are, but you have many companies where all these employees are now thrusted from the office and working out of their home. Okay, so and I ask people, I say, listen, are you working out of your home? Are you working from home? Or are you living at work? Wait for that. Okay. Because
Yeah.
either you're living at work or you're working from home. And when I say the conversations need to change, managers need to learn how to coach time management. They need to learn how to coach life balance. They need to be able to ask questions like, so, how are you distinguishing and setting that boundary when you're working at home to take care of yourself while honoring your business goals? How are you making sure you turn off work at the end of the day so you could be present with those who you love and your family and your friends? How do you make
Yeah.
sure that you're honoring self-care and making it non-negotiable? Everyone talks about when they go to college, the freshman 15 or 20. I've been hearing about, the COVID 20 to 30. The first thing that I've heard people throw out the window is self-care, but self-care is non-negotiable, because now this foundation that I just shared with you bleeds into what you're doing with your customers, your prospects, okay, your peers, your direct reports. If the predominant strategy of sales and leadership is care, the same conversations that managers now need to have with their people to help them holistically around their personal and professional life, because let's face it, there's no line between personal and professional anymore. There's no work and life. There's just life. And when it comes to managers and sellers, the conversation I just shared with you, think about that. We're struggling working and adopting. And it's not that you're the only one struggling, because you can be fine. You can be like, Keith, I got this down. I got my life balance down. I'm very disciplined. I know when to shut off work. I know when to turn my phone off and my laptop. Here's the problem though. Do your prospects know how to do that? Do your coworkers? Do your customers? I'm going to say no. You know why? Because they're human too. And they're struggling with the same things we are. So the biggest transformation that's going on today are the quality of conversations that are becoming much more personal than they ever were before. We all talk about, oh, the best salespeople build the relationships. The best salespeople are challengers. Okay, best salespeople definitely challenge their customers. Okay, but when it comes to relationships, we've never had this level of exposure in people's lives and in their homes than we do today. And after all, this is my studio. Okay, this is my happy place. Welcome. I know we won't have time to talk about music. We'll have a separate session on music coaching. Okay, my point is this: this is my home. Okay, we can have a conversation about what you see, just like I'm in your home or your office, and I can have a conversation about what I observe. So this is an opportunity to really get a sense of, how people are functioning every day. After all, you're going to tell me as a leader, if we're having a call and, I'm sitting here in my office and I'm still wearing the same dirty shirt for the week and it looks like I haven't showered for a week and cats and dogs and kids are running around and I don't have an office, so I'm working either in my basement or in my kitchen or in my bedroom. There's piles of paper everywhere, chaos. Are you going to tell me as a leader, you're going to look at this person one-on-one and say, okay, glad we finished our one-on-one. Have a great day. Think about all the coaching opportunities you just missed. Okay, you don't think what you've observed is going to impact that person personally and professionally in the quality of life and how they're performing at work? The problem is this: number one, managers never even thought about having conversations like this. Not your fault. We've never gone through this before. And number two, managers are reluctant to have the conversation because we've been so conditioned to be like, wait a second, is this an HR conversation? Am I allowed to, have this personal conversation? Yes, you are. The rules of engagement have changed. We get to recreate the rules of how we decide to drive our business forward. So, just to wrap this part up here, I'm also and Chris, if you could just jot down a note, I have a great resource of a template that every leader can use to have that personal conversation with people and really get to connect with them on a deeper level. Because again, if you look at the statistic and what managers perceive engagement, there's a disconnect. Okay, the only way we can improve that engagement is by connecting with people on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And what you touched on, I think, is so relevant. I think all of us, to your point, whether we wanted it or not, we're thrust into a new world that things changed, and how we adapt. We can't control those circumstances, but we can control how we react to those. And I think what you brought up is is extremely vital, and it actually made me think of kind of a good follow up, because I really appreciate what you said about helping the reps manage that life balance, understanding that, hey, when you're working, we work hard, we do a great job, we do all of those things. I think one of the things
Hey,
that I
Chris,
think
I'm sorry,
about
I want to jump
too.
in here. Chris, I'm sorry, you just said something I want to just comment on before I forget.
Yeah.
And in part of the initial question you shared about with the way we're transforming our sales process, therefore
Yep.
that needs to be coached too. So you mentioned before about how we can accelerate the success of our people. One word: observation. We just talked about it. I just didn't use that word. We actually
Yep.
have more opportunities to observe our people than we ever did before. Oh, Keith, how are you going to observe someone on a one-dimensional screen? Well, you have to learn how to build relationships on a one-dimensional screen. You're going to tell me you can't observe people right now in a meeting? You can't observe their engagement or disengagement? How about during a presentation or when they're having a video call with one of their prospects and customers? You're going to tell me you can't observe them there? We have more opportunities to do proactive, intentional observation than we actually ever did before. And I know there's not one manager who would disagree with me when I say we can all be doing more intentional observation. So, building off that first point, Chris, and bringing that home, is that if we don't have the sales process, if we don't have the steps in the sales process, if we don't have the meat in the sales process, i.e., step one, qualification, well, what are those questions that we sound like that we need to ask? If we don't have that, then what are we looking to observe? We need those milestones. We need those characteristics and core competencies to be able to look at their dashboard and be able to coach to what we see. Very difficult to coach if you don't have the core competencies and the practice to coach to.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes almost blind coaching, or coaching for the sake of coaching versus coaching with intent. Absolutely. And I think that's important. And it actually, what following up on that, because you brought up a point that made me think specifically around, we talk a lot about helping our reps find the time, helping our reps, uh, you know, when I was a sales leader, I think one of the things even I struggled with was how do I, as a leader, prioritize the time to coach? You know, you're managing deals, you're managing your people, you're managing all of these things. And sometimes there's a fine line between what I call, you know, trying to do the job for your rep and mentoring and coaching someone so that they get, you know, teach a man to fish, or, you know, the old saying, right? So in your experience, what are some of the things managers can do intentionally to dedicate that time to coaching? Maybe and to your point, I think it changed a lot over the last few years, where I don't have the ability to, you know, roll my chair down the aisle anymore and go to a cubicle or a desk and say, hey, you got 15 minutes, or hey, heard you on that call. What are some of the things that you're seeing some of the high performing leaders, or you would recommend doing in the kind of new world that we're in, that they can be intentional in dedicating time to that coaching?
Yeah, great. I'll share with you a quick story, and it really reinforces, and I'm not referring to anyone here, it reinforces how, with all the organizations globally throwing out the word coaching, 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 most companies have no clue what coaching is. And when I speak to leaders, whether it's, you know, VPs of sales, or, you know, sales ops, or you know, enablement, many times senior leaders would say, Keith, listen, if we're going to work with you, one of the things that I want my managers to be doing, I want them to be coaching 70% of their time. And managers are like, 70% of my time? What do you mean? How am I going to coach 70% of my time? I have all these other responsibilities. Once I hear someone say they want managers to coach for a certain duration of time, or a percentage of time during their week, I know they have no clue what coaching is. Because coaching is not something you do to someone. Coaching is simply a language you leverage in every conversation. For a manager to tell me, Keith, I want my managers to coach 70% of the time, is like saying I want them to breathe 70% of the time. No, just like, you know, and I practice my German now, but I don't want to embarrass myself. Just like learning German or Italian or Spanish or Urdu or Mandarin or any language, the language of leadership is coaching. Here's something else we'll talk about. The language of selling is coaching. The evolution of sales is not more sales training. It's getting your salespeople to coach your customers to succeed as well. And I know Chris is going to tie that back later on. But when we're looking at what coaching is, it's just how we communicate. It's how we show up. It's who we are, and it's the language we choose to have when we're engaging with people. After all, when you change the conversation, you change the outcome. So it's not like managers have to say, where am I looking for this time to coach? You're doing it in every conversation. Now, that's situational coaching. Granted, there are one-on-one coaching sessions that I would implore every manager to schedule, at least on a bi-weekly basis, depending on how many direct reports you have. And of course, that number can shift to every week to maybe every other week, depending on the needs of each person in your organization. So it's important that managers kind of flip that switch and realize, oh, I have to go do this coaching. No, it's just how you show up and learn that language. You know, your job is challenging enough. My job is to make your job easier.
Yeah, no, I think I like the idea that it's not something you do to someone, but it's a language you engage them with. And you know, one of the things, also as you mentioned that, it was making me think of, you know, in some of your content, in some of your books, and even in some of your blog posts that I've read over the years, one of the things you specifically talk about is the idea of enrollment in relation to sales
Mm-hmm.
leaders and their interactions with their sales teams, which I've always found really fascinating. And as I engaged, leaders of my own and thought about it from the reverse angle, coming in as the one needing the coaching or having that language of coaching done with me. I think one of the things is that I really always enjoyed about it was using the tenets of enrollment for trust and buy-in and alignment with their teams. Any specific insights that you have about practical things sales leaders can do today to start utilizing some of those tenets to get that trust, buy-in, and alignment with their teams when they're having those coaching language conversations?
Absolutely. And of course, there are so many, Chris, as you know, conversations we can have around enrollment. How do you enroll
Yeah.
people in coaching? How do you set expectations around coaching? How do you enroll an underperformer in, transforming their performance in 30 days or less? How do you deal with a relationship issue? How do you deal with a top performer? How do you deal with a toxic conversation?
Yep.
I'm going to share with everyone right now, and don't disconnect after I say this and think I'm crazy, okay? There is no such thing as a difficult conversation. Huh, Keith, you're crazy. I literally have to go speak to someone about performance and their attitude, and that I know is going to be a difficult conversation. Well, no, it's not, and that's why Chris brought up enrollment. See, think about what makes a conversation difficult, everyone. It's the assumptions we're going into the conversation with, which then unfortunately drive our behavior. So if Chris and I had a conversation last week and it totally blew up and we just did not see eye to eye, and by the way, this never happened, okay? And now Chris and I have to have another conversation next week. Well, what do you think my internal narrative is? Oh, geez, the last conversation I had with Chris was just a waste of time and he didn't listen to me. So I'm sure the same thing, past experience, right? Projected future negative expectation. I guess the same thing will happen again. And that's the definition of an assumption. A past experience or a belief we perceive we hold without the facts to back it up. So what makes a conversation difficult are the prior experiences we're looking at. So here's a different way. What if you approach every conversation newly? The reason why people have disagreement and shy away from conflict and confrontation is because they think it's going to blow up in this friction, okay? Or it's going to sabotage a relationship. But here's the root cause. So everyone, hear me when I say this. When intentions aren't clear, people default to fear. If I am let's say I'm your manager, right? I send you an email. In the subject body, it says, "Call me ASAP," all caps. What's your first reaction?
Oh shit. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, what do I do? Am I getting fired? Am I being put on a PIP? Did one of my people quit? Is there an issue with the customer? What did I do wrong? Why is it that we never go to, my boss wants to tell me how awesome I am? We never go there, do we? Because when intentions aren't clear, people default to fear. It's the default file. And then finally, you muster up the courage to call your manager, and your manager says to you, "Hey, Tori, listen, I just want to tell you, I know you were struggling in the beginning of last quarter, but you turned it around and you crushed it. And I just want to acknowledge you for a job well done." Thank you. Didn't see that coming. Why? Because when intentions aren't clear, people default to fear. I'm sharing this with you to pour a foundation of what the solution is. The solution is enrollment, as Chris was saying. Enrollment is about setting positive intent in every conversation. So managers are really good at the what. Hey, you know what, Emily, here's what we're doing. Well, boss, why are we doing it? Well, because I was told we have to do it, so you have to do it too. Well, if we want to keep our job, I guess we'll do it. But how engaged am I really going to be when I was just told I have to work and fill in my CRM when I have no idea what the benefit is for me? And then we wonder why people are reluctant to do things. It's because they don't see the with them, just like your customers. What's in it for me? Every time you approach someone, you have an agenda, but so does everyone else. And it's essential that when you share your agenda, it's not just like, hey, here's what we need to do, but you need to share the two missing components that's going to create buy-in and alignment, which is here's why we're doing it, and here's what's in it for you. It's the most simplistic model of enrollment I can give you. Here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and here's what's in it for you. When you can now take everyone's business objectives, right, and align them with their personal goals, you now have a shared goal, a shared vision, so that people are now thinking you've connected the dots here. Oh, so if I achieve my business objectives, I achieve my personal goals. Now imagine the exponential output you're going to get from your people because they see what's in it for them. And enrollment is something that happens from manager to direct. It could happen peer to peer. It could certainly work exceptionally well when you're working with your customers. And guess what? You can coach up too. Okay. Managers, I've heard recently, and again, it can't always blame the manager, right? Because if the manager isn't getting good coaching, it's often difficult for them to recognize what other people's needs are. So, if you're sitting there saying, Keith, I want to be coached, I want to improve, just like I know everyone here does. But my manager hasn't come to me and started coaching me, and I could really, really use some great coaching, and I really, really trust and like my manager. You could be waiting your entire career for that person to come to you, and it's not because they don't care. It's because they're not recognizing what your needs are. So if that's the case, it's time for you to take the initiative to go to your manager and coach up. And what does that sound like? Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, I want to make sure what I achieve the goals that I need to do for the organization, and what I want for you and for the organization is to make sure we have another successful year. And I'd love to sit down and chat with you about how I know I love to be managed and motivated and held accountable, so that we can create that relationship where you know exactly how to push and motivate me so I can achieve the goals for the company, for the team, and for myself. Are you open to talk about what those parameters would be? I'm seeing a lot of this. That's not going to hurt. It's not like you're going to the dentist, okay? That's why I'm saying, guys, there's no such thing as a difficult conversation. It's all how you position it. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Chris.
think that no, absolutely. I think and that you said a lot of things that hopefully resonated with everyone. When intentions aren't clear, it usually results in fear, and that is absolutely something. One of the things I think about, I talk a lot when we talk about sales processes, that I think sometimes we try to forget. I don't think we try, but unintentionally forget that we're all human beings on the other end of a virtual meeting here. And one of the things I see salespeople do a lot in sales process and sales stages is they become really subservient, or they allow a very negative relationship to happen with a buyer, because I don't want to offend the buyer if I push back on something. And I tell everyone, take it in your personal life. Would you ever want to engage with someone, a family member, a friend, who can ask anything of you and you have to jump to it, but if you can't ask anything of them out of fear? And that actually made me think of the concept, the same thing, which is I've received plenty of text messages from family members that have sounded like "call me ASAP," and my first instant thought is, someone's had a heart attack, something terrible has happened. And I'll call, and my wife says, "I need you to pick up milk on the way home." And it's like, what? You can't lead with that. You got to let me know, like, give me some insight here, so I'm okay here, so I'm not panicking, thinking about what's going on. And that really resonated with me as you said that. I think one thing that I started to think of as you talked about that, right, is, you even brought up the idea of an individual contributor level, even up to a manager level, going to senior leadership, turning enrollment back and saying, hey, this is what I need from you from a coaching perspective. What are some of the ways, and I'm going to kind of flip it back around, that you can see maybe someone who's resistant to that enrollment or having a coaching conversation, what are some of the things you found to maybe help someone feel a little bit more confident or open when you're engaging someone that's on your team, someone that you work with who is a resistant to that enrollment, is needs the help but is really shying away from
Okay, so I'm hearing two opportunities in here. I'm hearing one opportunity from more of a broader perspective of how do we improve our relationships through enrollment. And if you could just make
it?
a dot there so I don't have a senior moment and forget about that, Chris. And number
Yep.
two, how do you, and I want to make sure I heard this right, how do you enroll people on your team around coaching
Who
and
may
create the
who may be resistant to it, right? Like I think we've all been in a world where there's people that are like ready and almost over ready and over willing to talk about all of the problems they have, if that's even a thing. But we also all have had people on our team that we know need to have those coaching conversations, but are also somewhat resistant to it. How do we help people overcome that as leaders?
Perfect. And I hope everyone's noticing that, when it comes to, I don't use the word training. I like to use the word transformation, because training is just like, kind of like, this is what you need to change. But if you think about what we're talking about, we're also thinking about what you need to change in how you think, in your attitude, in your mindset. So you're developing as a holistic leader, changing what you do and how you think. That's transformation. So, getting back to your point, Chris, about people that are reluctant to coaching, that is another great opportunity to use enrollment. Now, what would that sound like? It could sound like this. If you were that person who's reluctant, I could take two different approaches here. Now, here's the tactical part of what you guys can use, language of coaching. Hey, Chris, listen, what I want for you is to be able to achieve the goals you want here in your career and personally. And I've been working really, really hard to become a better coach for you and for the team. And I'll be the first to say I probably messed up coaching so many times before. I really didn't think, I really thought I knew what it was, but it wasn't. And it's not about telling you what to do. So I've been really focusing on what I can do to change the conversation, to really tap into what you know, your wisdom and your skills. And I was hoping we can chat for a few minutes and talk about and develop a mutual understanding and definition of what great coaching looks and feels like for you. Set some measurable parameters around the coaching, and then start identifying some of the goals and challenges that you'd like to work on together, knowing that everything we discuss is always held in the strictest of confidence. Key point. Are you open to having this conversation?
Yeah.
Who's going to say
Yeah.
no to that? Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Here's what's in it for you. And notice I didn't push it. Permission. Are you open to having the conversation? You want to hear an affirmation. You want to hear a yes. Now, let's take a different approach. And I want to share this with you guys because this is a great tool to also share with your salespeople to get more truth out of your customers and prospects. As a matter of fact, it's a very powerful way to pull out objections. So here's a great example of coaching language that your salespeople can use, and you as well. Let's say you're noticing someone, their actions are not aligned with what they're sharing. What they say is not what they're doing. And maybe they're saying to you, and guys, what I'm talking about. Keith, you ever speak to someone and feel like they're just telling you what they think you want to hear? I think we've been in that situation. Why? Because it's a trust issue, and it may not be your fault. It could have been their prior manager's fault. Maybe they were toxic. But here's the problem, everyone. If we don't re-enroll and reset expectations with people, they're taking their old manager's face and they're putting it right on you. Okay? And they're like, well, that's how my last manager was, so that's how you're going to be. Assumptions. The only way to shatter that is by setting new and positive intent. So now pulling that back, to 360 is now you're having a conversation with someone who said they're open to coaching, but you're noticing they're reluctant. You're noticing they're just not opening up as much. Well, you have two choices. You can say, listen, Paul, listen, man, we're having these coaching sessions, but everyone else is opening up and being really, transparent, but you're not, man. What's going on? Okay, right away, I would run because you just put me on the defensive. Okay, not the way to go. Here's how you do it. Hey, Paul, listen. I know when we first started setting the expectations of coaching, it sounded like you were pretty aligned with what the coaching is, a definition that is valuable for you, and how the experience could be valuable for you. However, I've noticed over the last 3 sessions that there's been a different level of engagement, and I'm sensing that something may have changed that's causing some reluctance in wanting to open up during our coaching. Is there any truth to that? Now, that's $1 billion strategy, guys. Think about if your salespeople do that. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I know we've spoken about our value offering and how you already told me this is the platform that's going to work for you and your organization. However, I'm sensing that there's something else that's getting in the way to move forward. Is there any truth to that? And think about how powerful that can be when your salespeople use that language, because they're reluctant to have that conversation. Why? Because they don't have the language. There's the language of sales and leadership. It's called the I am sensing that statement. I'm sensing that there's some reluctance on your end for coaching. I'm sensing that there might be some pushback on your end to start prospecting more. I'm sensing that maybe there's something else going on that's throwing you off, possibly, hurting your time management or your life balance. Now, notice here, because I'm saying I'm sensing, I'm making it about me, not about the other person. I'm sensing, my spider senses are tingling. This is about me. Just please acknowledge whether I'm right or wrong. So now you're putting it on you, not on them.
Yeah, I think that is spot on. And I think that type of language it's building language versus fear inducing. And I really like that. And it actually made me think, as you were saying that as well, in your book, Sales Leadership, the kind of flip side of that, which was the positive side of it, you outline in your book, Sales Leadership, the 15 kind of toxic tactics that can make coaching be very unnatural or ineffective, from some of the things that inherently you kind of touched on a little bit, and it made me think of this. But so I guess let me ask you, what are some of the most common mistakes you're seeing managers make, but more importantly, how can they avoid them? Because I think that you can have well-intentioned interactions. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily the right interactions, as you mentioned, or the right kind of language to be using. So what are some of those toxic engagements you're seeing, and what are some of the ways we can avoid those as leadership?
Sure. And I think that is that's a question that most managers do struggle with. To your point, Chris, it's very, very rare. I mean, I could probably count on one hand over 30 years traveling the world that, a manager that didn't have good intention. Most managers have good intention. They want to help. They like seeing other people succeed, except there's a trap. To your question, if I could be as succinct as possible, is the biggest trap that leaders fall into, and salespeople, when it comes to coaching, is coaching in your own image. Okay, so let's break this down. I'm a salesperson, okay, and I'm sure this has never happened in your organization before. Hope my sarcasm is translating. You had a great salesperson. Your manager walks up to the salesperson and says, "Hey, got a great opportunity for you to be a manager." Salesperson looks around and says, "Sounds great. Okay, I'll be a manager." Next day, the salesperson's a manager. Do they get trained? Did they get onboarded? Is there any coaching framework that they're supposed to be leaning on? Absolutely not. They were just the top seller. So now you guys see where I'm going with this. Now you have this top seller, right? And they want to help. They truly want to help. Problem is they're not skilled as a coach. So what happens is their direct reports go to them and they ask their boss, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Super Salesperson, this is the situation I'm running into with this customer. What should I do? And this salesperson, all in good intent, says, you know what? When I was in this situation, this is what I did. So this should probably work for you as well. You just coached in your own image. You're creating mini me's. You're developing Autobots. Okay? You're not tapping into people's individuality. And the greater cost around this is when people come to you and you're the manager, your job is to make your people more valuable every day. Providing them with the answer does not make them more valuable. It makes them more dependent. So what I'm really referring to here is managers, you need to quit today. Don't turn into resignation. That's not what I'm saying. You need to quit your job as chief problem solver. Okay? You cannot be coach and chief problem solver. It's like mixing water and oil. Choose, okay? If you're the chief problem solver, you're running around all day putting out fires and solving everyone's challenges. I'm just curious, how does that feel at the end of the day? A little tiring, exhausted, and then you look back and say, gee, I wish I was more productive that day. Well, what if you had less fires coming at you? The only way you could have less fires coming at you is if you empower your people to develop their solutions on their own. So now here's that salesperson who's a manager, and they're not a manager, they just become a super salesperson because they're doing their job for their salespeople. Now I'm going to give you a tool, okay, so you can avoid being the chief problem solver, all right? The tool is very simple. It's a 30-second coaching strategy. So tying this back to Chris's first question, does coaching take too long? Well, you can use what I'm about to share in literally every conversation where someone comes to you looking for assistance. And here it is. And again, Chris, jot a note. I'm going to send this to everyone as well. The 60-second coaching strategy sounds like this. Let's say Ralph, you come to me and you're like, hey, Keith, listen, I have a challenge. Okay, now here I am as a manager. I have a defining moment. I can go this way and do what I normally do and say, oh man, Ralph, I've done that 1,000 times. This is what worked for me, so it should work for you. Or you can go this way. And instead of leading with answers, which most managers do, they lead with questions. So here comes the 60-second coaching strategy. And as I said earlier, it's really 30 seconds. I'm from New York and I talk fast, but I'm going to talk slow right now. Hey, you know what, Ralph? I'd love to share my opinion on what you can do. However, you're a lot closer to this situation and this client, and I trust you and I trust your judgment. So what's your opinion on how to move forward and achieve the result you want? I was talking slow. I think it was easily under 30 seconds. And you can do that all day long. Break it down. Hey, Ralph, I'm happy to share with you my opinion. Great. So they're coming to you. They want your opinion. You already told them you're going to give it to them. The big distinction here is when you do it. You don't kill people with questions when you're coaching. At some point, you're going to share your observations, but it's not in the beginning of the conversation. It's at the end. It's once you understand their point of view, then you fill in the gaps. So when you say to someone, hey, I trust you and I trust your judgment, what's that going to do? It's going to build their confidence and it's going to build trust. And then when you ask the question, what's your opinion on how to handle this? I didn't ask what the solution is or the strategy or the process, because those could be right or wrong. I asked for the opinion. Remember, guys, leadership and coaching is a language. Everyone has an opinion. Opinions are not right or wrong. But when you ask someone an opinion, they cannot come back to you and say, I don't know. You don't know your opinion? Everyone has an opinion. And this is why I say, no one can argue that you don't have time to coach, because if you have time to give an answer, you got time to ask a question. So be mindful of the cost of being that chief problem solver, because I know there's probably a few of you out there. Okay. The more you keep giving the answers, the more you keep creating dependency on you. You cannot scale dependency. You have 5 direct reports now, 10, 20, 30, 50. You can't have 50 people outside of your proverbial office waiting to get an answer from you. You can't scale that. Our job as leaders is to develop the future bench of leaders. Only way you can scale is by empowering people to solve their own problems. Have them develop their critical thinking skills. When they do that, they also build confidence. Then they're not coming back to you with every challenge. Because here's the real irony, and I've never met a manager who doesn't want a team of independent and accountable people. But every time you give an answer, you're making them dependent on you, and you're actually robbing them of the very accountability you're looking to instill. Think about it. If I say, hey, Robert, here's what you need to do, and Robert goes out and executes it, and it doesn't work, then he gets to come back to me and say, hey, Keith, look, my hands are clean. You told me what to do. It's not my fault. It's your fault. So now we're robbing people of the very accountability we want to instill. It sounds insane. So we have the opportunity to break the cycle just using that one tool. So hope that helps everyone.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, if anything, over the last minute or so, there was several things I was checking the box of like, oh, I've done that. Oh, I've done that. Oh, I've done that. And I think you brought up some good action items, and it leads actually into the thought process that I have specifically about being the chief problem solver that you mentioned. I think it's sometimes one thing that you said that resonated with me is at the end of a long day, coming back and being like, man, that was an exhausting day, but I don't feel productive because I was trying to solve problems for 17 different situations that came up. And that's definitely something I feel like is practical application for me moving forward. So thank you for that. I think we have time
Yeah,
for
and you know
about
what,
one or
just to your point, I want to just make sure we build off what you're saying is
Mhm.
managers believe that's their job. That's the problem. Managers, I ask managers, what's your value? I'm a subject matter expert. Okay, great. That's part of your value, but it's not all of your value. And being the SME, being the subject matter expert, can actually hurt you more than not. After all, I'm not an expert in your industry. I'm not an expert in any of my clients' industries or businesses, but I'm an expert in coaching. So therefore, all I have is the question. So if you actually think about it, sometimes your experience can actually hinder your coaching. You guys see where I'm coming from on that? Yeah. I just wanted to
yeah.
jump and add on that, Chris.
No, I think that's spot on. I think what you said made me think of the concept that you may have 10 years of experience, or you may have 1 year of experience 10 times over, and that's very different than being able to help someone coach and help. And it's a different skill set. Just because you know a lot about a product or an industry, that's not your job as a manager. Your job as a manager is to help empower those people to become the best versions of themselves, create that accountability. And I've loved that. I think we have time for one or two more questions. One
Chris,
thing that
if
I
you wouldn't stop saying good stuff, I wouldn't keep jumping in. But it's
yeah, no, you're
important.
good.
You said something else. I just have to just make sure I just give that little nugget here. The 3 fundamental principles of coaching. Okay, you just pull that out of me right now. I want to make sure I share that with everyone. Here we go. Principle number 1, let your people do their job. That's why you hired them. Principle number 2, let your people do their job. And I don't know if anyone's feeling clairvoyant to guess what principle number 3 might be. C 1 and 2. Let your people do their job. That's why we hired them. The challenge is Don't make yourself wrong because like, oh my God, Keith, I should know how to coach. No, if you were never taught, it's not your fault. This is a global epidemic. That's why only less than 1% of all companies have a true, authentic coaching culture. And you guys are already light years ahead because of what you're doing. So I acknowledge all of you for it.
No, that's great. That's great. Those three bullets are now burned in my brain. So the good news is they're hard to forget when they're all the same. So that's fantastic. So we're happy to have them. Um,
I
you know,
told you, hey Chris, I told
looking
you my job is to keep things simple, right?
exactly, keep it simple, absolutely, and we're all on board for the keep it simple methodology here. So with that being said, knowing we have about time for one more question, I think. Um, from my purview, we've learned a lot of fantastic things that I would say are applicable almost immediately. I think, some of the things that stood out to me, Keith, is the idea of the 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 leading as opposed to like intention. Lack of intention leads to the fear. I think being open with intention about what we're having conversations about, but also I love the idea of getting opinions versus giving answers. I think to me that's one of the things I've thought to streamline conversations sometimes when things are busy. It's, someone asks something and as opposed to taking a real, like you said, taking the language of coaching in real time and saying, well, what's your opinion on this? I'll happily give you mine, but what's yours? I think sometimes in lieu of that, I've historically just said, here's what I would do, here's what I would do, here's what I would do. And once again, it may be correct, it may be not correct, but it's not about that. It's about giving them the ability to grow, gain that confidence. What in kind
And
of
that's why,
closing here? Oh,
I'm sorry, just your point. And that's why, and again, I appreciate you pulling this out of me. I think it's important that we actually nail a definition of coaching.
yeah,
What's the definition of
yeah,
coaching? We can all adapt globally, universally, within your organization. I'm not going to give you a long academic, drawn out definition. I'll give you a simple one. Coaching is the art of creating new possibilities, period. In every conversation, you are either manipulating people and driving your agenda, or you're using open-ended, non-leading questions to create a new possibility. And I will say, listen, I wake up in the morning. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning. I couldn't sleep because I was so excited that I would be with you guys today. I have the best job in the world. I get to work with people like you and watch you achieve greater success and your people achieve greater success in your personal life and your professional life. What could be better and more rewarding than that? But guess what, guys? You and I have the same job. You guys just don't see it that way. Keith, what are you talking about? You have your own practice, but so do you. See, my practice is my clients. Your practice is your team. So I wake up every morning empowered to work with my team, with my clients. I want for you to feel the same way. And if you're not feeling that way, you're not coaching. So there's your barometer right there.
that's awesome. No, that's great, and I love the definition, and I think it's definitely once again it's proactive and all great things here. Um, in closing, Bill, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add before we dive in and talk about some of the actionable items we actually get with Keith as we go into our next sessions for the day. You're on mute, Bill.
Bill,
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you sound great.
Yeah. So just one question, Keith. Throughout my career, you talk about coaching and how important is it to know people on a personal level and what their drivers are? Because I've had leaders that were just all business all the time, and it just became uncomfortable.
yeah. Oh, what a great way to end our conversation here. Uh, Today more than ever, and I know, people say it's not business. It's not personal. It's business. I actually posted the other day. It's not business. It's personal. There's been a massive transformational shift here. It is personal today. It is personal today because people are, as we are alone and disengaged or struggling at home and trying to create life balance, so are our clients and our prospects. If we can have those deeper conversations with them, it's going to foster a level of trust and that you've never ever been able to experience before with your people, with your customers. That will actually become your competitive edge. So, in terms of with managers and developing their skills and working with your salespeople, uh, it's and again, I don't want to be redundant, but the real opportunity here is that I see you and you see me. If we're more mindful of the right questions to ask, that now move into more personal questions, at the end of the day, it's just going to lead to more business and more sales. So, Bill, I don't know if I answered your question fully, though. I think there was a
No,
part two.
I think that was spot on. But no, Chris, I thought the session was great, informative, except for my intro.
All good, all good. I'll give you, we all agree that brains don't function very well before 6 a.m. So
You have
all
no
good.
idea that the technology challenges, no hot water this morning. It was like,
Oh no.
it was hot garbage.
Oh gosh. Technology is a wonderful thing when it works, right?
Yes, it is.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, awesome. Well, Keith, I think this has been awesome. We appreciate the time. A couple final slides and a couple final words I wanted to share with everyone before we go. Hopefully everyone can see my screen here. Is everyone seeing it in presentation mode? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
fantastic. So just a final piece here, just as we kick off a couple things to be excited for. Once again, our new GoTo sales process, a lot of great things going on from a sales enablement perspective, but from a scope perspective, looking forward to the keynotes later today. We have some great sessions. I'm looking forward to having everyone be engaged, be a part of it. It's going to be a great week. Super excited. The sessions are interactive. They're going to be a lot of fun, but they're also going to be very applicable. One thing that's really great too is if you want one of Keith's books, I highly recommend them. I have used them. The sales leadership book I've read many times. But part of the cool thing GoTo provides is your ability to use the reading reimbursement program. All of the information you can find on the Hive, but allows you to keep a book of your choice, keep your receipt. You can submit the expense and code it as professional books, and you'll be reimbursed within 2 weeks. This is a great opportunity of GoTo investing in each one of you. Take advantage of these fantastic options. And as a reminder, I think Tara put the link for this as well into the chat. We want your feedback. This is this has been a great session, Keith. We're really looking forward to it. We'd love to hear from each one of you. If you could take our quick 1-minute survey by either scanning the QR code or taking advantage of the link that's in the chat. We would love to hear how we did and any ways we can get better. So with that being said, I am going to quit sharing and thank every one of you for being involved, being part of today's session. And Keith, most importantly, thank you so much for the time today, and we look forward to more. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.